The frost breathes across the steppe like a spirit of the old world, silent, watchful, merciless. The stars shimmer in the high darkness, each one a witness to the unspoken oaths of men who dream of power. Beneath their pale fire rides Timur. His horse's hooves whisper across the frozen grass, the earth crunching softly beneath iron and leather. His armor bears the scars of forgotten skirmishes, the marks of a life lived on the edge of hunger and war. He is young, yet the night clings to him like an old friend, a shadow that knows his name. He halts upon a ridge where the wind howls through the bones of the land. Below, the sleeping city of Kesh lies cradled in moonlight, its domes, its narrow alleys, its graves. There, beneath the dust, his ancestors rest, warriors, shepherds, and forgotten kings. Timur watches the city as if staring into the hollow of time itself. His breath forms a silver cloud before his lips, and in the silence he speaks, not to the gods, nor to the living, but to the soil that birthed him. "I will not be buried among the forgotten," he whispers. "My name will outlive the wind." The sound vanishes into the steppe, yet in that stillness something ancient stirs. Not fate, not prophecy, but the awakening of will. He closes his fist around the iron ring on his hand, its edges cold, its weight sharp. Forged from the shattered blades of fallen men, it is more than ornament. It is a covenant, a reminder that glory is built upon ruin, and every empire begins in the silence of one man's defiance. Far to the east, a thin line of light begins to bleed across the horizon. The sky bruises from black to blue. The campfires behind him gutter and die, leaving only smoke drifting through the dawn. Timur turns his horse toward the light, toward the unknown, and rides. The wind snaps at his cloak, carrying whispers of snow and destiny. He does not ride toward peace. He rides toward fire. The morning grows harsh and white. Frost clings to every blade of grass. The steppe stretches endless and empty, save for the distant cries of crows circling some unseen carcass. Timur rides without pause, his thoughts locked between memory and hunger. Each hoofbeat sounds like a heartbeat against eternity. He remembers the day his father's tent was torn open by rival clans, the smoke, the chaos, the blood soaking into the rugs. He remembers the sharp cry of his mother as they dragged him away, the taste of ash in his mouth, the humiliation of powerlessness. The world had taken everything from him, and in its theft it had given him a singular gift, the certainty that mercy is a lie. He learned the art of waiting, the patience of wolves. Now, as he rides through the skeletal dawn, he feels that same hunger return, the gnawing need to carve order from the chaos that had once consumed his youth. Around him, the horizon bends under the weight of the rising sun, and the cold begins to thaw. Somewhere beyond this endless sea of grass lie cities fat with gold, empires drunk with comfort. Timur can almost taste them, the softness, the decadence, the scent of weakness ripe for conquest. But he is still a shadow, a forgotten son of a fallen house. His name is not yet thunder, but whisper. The morning grows harsh and white. Frost clings to every blade of grass. The steppe stretches endless and empty, save for the distant cries of crows circling some unseen carcass. Timur rides without pause, his thoughts locked between memory and hunger. Each hoofbeat sounds like a heartbeat against eternity. He remembers the day his father's tent was torn open by rival clans. The smoke, the chaos, the blood soaking into the rugs. He remembers the sharp cry of his mother as they dragged him away, the taste of ash in his mouth, the humiliation of powerlessness. The world had taken everything from him, and in its theft, it had given him a singular gift, the certainty that mercy is a lie. He learned the art of waiting, the patience of wolves. Now, as he rides through the skeletal dawn, he feels that same hunger return, the gnawing need to carve order from the chaos that had once consumed his youth. Around him, the horizon bends under the weight of the rising sun, and the cold begins to thaw. Somewhere beyond this endless sea of grass lie cities fat with gold, empires drunk with comfort. Timur can almost taste them, the softness, the decadence, the scent of weakness, ripe for conquest. But he is still a shadow, a forgotten son of a fallen house. His name is not yet thunder, but whisper. He halts at a stream, the water frozen in silver ribbons. Kneeling, he breaks the ice with his hand, lets the shards bite into his skin, and washes his face in the freezing flow. The pain clears his mind. Above him, ravens drift like omens. He watches them for a long while, his breath slow, his eyes unblinking. Then he speaks again to no one and to everything. There will come a time, he says, when the earth itself trembles beneath my banners, when the rivers run red and kings remember this name. He straightens, and for the briefest instant, the reflection in the ice is not the face of a young warrior, but of something older, something carved by purpose. By midday, he reaches a caravan road, a thin scar running through the wilderness, marked by the bones of traders and thieves. He finds smoke on the horizon, a camp, man. As he draws closer, the wind carries their voices, coarse laughter, the clang of iron, the language of soldiers. Outcasts, mercenaries, wolves without masters. men who sell their loyalty for coin or for the promise of plunder. Timur dismounts, leading his horse by the reins. The camp watches him approach, a solitary rider draped in dust and silence. A man marked by something they cannot name. He stops before their fire, his eyes like coals beneath his hood. "Who leads you?" he asks. A burly man steps forward, his beard thick with frost. "No one leads us," he says. "We serve whoever pays." Timur nods slowly. "Then you serve no one worth following." Laughter ripples through the camp, rough, mocking, edged with curiosity. Yet Timur does not flinch. He steps closer to the fire, and in its glow, the iron ring on his hand glints like a shard of night. "Men who follow gold die forgotten," he says. "Men who follow destiny carve their names into the bones of empires." Silence settles. The wind moans through the grass. The mercenaries exchange glances, uncertain whether to laugh again or to kneel. Timur turns his back to them and mounts his horse. "When you tire of dying for others," he calls, "come find me in the east." And he rides away, leaving only the echo of his words behind. The sun descends into a haze of red and gold. The steppe glows like a field of embers. Timur rides through it as if through the heart of a dream, alone, yet never truly alone. For behind him, unseen, the first threads of allegiance begin to weave. Men who have nothing begin to whisper his name. And in the stillness of the coming night, destiny listens. He halts once more, high upon another ridge. The world is vast before him, endless plains, distant mountains, the thin smoke of unseen towns. The light fades, and for a moment all seems to hold its breath. He raises his hand toward the horizon, the iron ring catching the last fire of the dying sun. "Let them sleep," he murmurs, "for soon they will awaken to me." The wind rises again, carrying dust, whispers, and the promise of war. In the distance, lightning flickers across the clouds, a storm gathering far to the east. Timur watches it in silence. His eyes narrow, not in fear, but in recognition. It is the same storm that lives within him. And as the night falls once more over Transoxiana, the world turns quietly toward the age of the conqueror. The crippled wolf has yet to limp. The fire has yet to burn. But the ashes, they already wait. The streets of Samarkand breathe with life, a restless tide of color and sound that never truly sleeps. Silk ripples like water in the hands of traders. The sun burns upon domes the color of heaven. Every scent, cinnamon, smoke, Sweat, jasmine, blends into a single perfume of empire. The murmur of voices fills the air like wind through reeds. Persian merchants haggling over lapis and glass. Turkic guards laughing in harsh bursts. Mongol tongues rolling ancient words of conquest. It is a symphony of ambition, and at its heart moves a man who once crossed the steppe with nothing but hunger in his chest and fire in his eyes. Timur, the lame lion of the East, the conqueror born from dust and silence. He walks among them now, not as a legend, but as a whisper made flesh, cloaked as a pilgrim, yet shadowed by men who kill in his name. His limp strikes the cobblestones like a slow drumbeat. Every step echoes the memory of a wound that time itself dared not heal. Around him the crowd parts. Some bow deeply, others avert their eyes. The air seems to change where he passes, thicker, slower, expectant. Children stop their games and scatter. Merchants bow, hands trembling, caught between devotion and dread. To see Timur in the markets is to feel history pause mid-breath. For the ruler of Samarkand walks not to buy, not to bless, but to remember, to remind himself of what he has built, and of what must yet fall. The market's din fades as he turns down a narrow alley where sunlight slants in dusty beams. The walls are tiled with fading blues, chipped by years of wind and the careless passage of soldiers. A muezzin's call trembles faintly over the rooftops, a prayer woven into the evening air. Timur pauses to listen, eyes half closed. The words rise like smoke, dissolving into the sky. Allah is greater. For a moment, something within him stirs, not faith, not doubt, but memory. Of his youth in the wild steppes, when the sky itself seemed endless and cruel. Of the night he swore before the graves of his ancestors that his name would outlive death. That vow burns still, undimmed by the years, by the blood, by the empires swallowed whole beneath his banner. He moves on. The alley opens into a square filled with the smell of roasting meat and the laughter of men who think themselves safe. At its far end rises the jewel of Samarkand, the great mosque, its dome shining like a captured piece of dawn. Beneath it, calligraphers bend over parchment, their ink-stained fingers etching verses that will outlast them all. The scratch of the quill is the heartbeat of civilization, fragile, eternal. Timur watches them for a long time. One of the scribes looks up, startled by his presence. The ruler's gaze falls upon him, calm and cold as still water. "Write," Timur says softly, "so that those who come after remember not only our glory, but our silence." The scribe lowers his eyes and obeys. Night comes like the closing of a hand.
The domes fade into shadow, and 1,000 lamps bloom in the courtyards. The air cools. The scent of jasmine drifts through lattice windows. Samarkand, the heart of the world, begins its nocturnal prayer.
In the great square, the faithful kneel as the muezzin's voice trembles from the minaret, rising, breaking, echoing against marble and dust. Men weep softly, women whisper blessings, even the stray dogs lie quiet. Overhead, cranes circle in slow spirals, their wings flashing silver in the moonlight. To some, they are omens. To Timur, they are reminders that nothing truly stands still, that every motion in the heavens foretells change. Within the palace walls, where light burns low and guarded, his council gathers. The air inside is thick with musk and caution. Maps lie unfurled upon the table. Persia's deserts, India's rivers, the roads to Damascus and Delhi traced in thin lines of ink. Around them, men speak of gold, fortresses, alliances, betrayal. The language of empire is never soft. But Timur listens in silence. His hand rests upon the table, tracing with one finger the edge of a dagger's shadow. He does not speak until the last voice dies away, until the only sound left is the breathing of men who fear his thoughts. When he finally speaks, it is not loud, yet the room stills as if the world itself leaned closer. "You speak of conquest," he says. "I speak of order. You dream of spoils, I dream of time." He lifts the dagger, and its blade catches the flame of the nearest lamp. "They will call it war," he murmurs, "but I will call it creation." The words hang there, heavy and terrible. A counselor bows his head. Another swallows, the sweat glistening on his neck. None dare reply. Timur's eyes, lit by the trembling flame, are unreadable. Not wrath, not mercy, only the cold geometry of destiny. Outside the palace, the caravans wait beyond the gates. Their camels sway gently, the bells on their necks chiming like faint echoes of unseen futures. Soldiers whisper prayers as they tighten straps and check blades. The night wind moves through them like a quiet song, threading between tents and torches, brushing against armor and silk. Samarkand itself seems to listen. The city knows, it always knows, when its master is about to move the world again. From the highest dome to the lowest stable, the pulse of anticipation beats like a second heart beneath the earth. Timur steps onto the balcony that overlooks it all. The wind carries up the mingled breath of 1,000,000 souls. Below, the lamps glitter like stone trapped in stone. He leans upon the railing, his ringed hand reflecting the moonlight, his face half shadowed, half fire. He closes his eyes. In his mind,
He sees beyond the city, past the Oxus and the burning deserts, past the mountains of Khorasan and the gardens of Shiraz, into lands where other kings sleep, believing themselves safe. He smiles. Somewhere far off, thunder rumbles, distant but approaching. Soon the banners will rise again, the hoofbeats will thunder, the rivers will turn dark. But for now, there is only this, a city of light and prayer, caught between peace and the promise of fire. The muezzin's final call fades into the wind. The bells of the caravans answer softly. And beneath the vast moonlit sky of Transoxiana, Timur turns away from the city's glow, toward the dark horizons of empire yet unmade. Beyond the gates, the wind waits, the road waits, history waits.
And the iron will of the crippled conqueror begins again to move the world. The snow falls without mercy. Each flake drifts through the air like a fragment of ash, pale, weightless, eternal. It settles upon broken walls, upon twisted iron, upon the still faces of the dead. Isfahan does not breathe tonight. The city lies hollowed, its streets drowned in silence. Smoke rises in slow, mourning spirals from the ruins, carrying with it the scent of burnt grain and blood, a sweetness turned sick. Beneath the bruised sky, the world is gray and motionless, save for the faint crackle of ice beneath boots. Timur's soldiers move through the wreckage, ghosts in iron and leather, their armor blackened by soot, their swords dulled by use. One man stops beside a frozen fountain. Once it would have sung with clear water. Now it holds only shards of ice and red snow. Nearby, a woman kneels before the rubble of what had been her home. Her veil is torn, her face half hidden by frost. In her trembling hands she cradles a small clay figure, a child's toy, burned but unbroken. She cups it as though it still carries warmth. The wind moves through the empty doorways, carrying a sound that is almost a lullaby, almost a scream. The soldier looks away. Even he cannot meet her eyes. Timur stands at the shattered gates of Isfahan, where victory tastes like iron and smoke. His breath steams in the cold. Around him his generals wait, armored shapes against the pale horizon, their faces wary, reverent. He gazes at what remains. The domes that once caught the sun now sag like broken crowns. Minarets lean like weary sentinels. The air hums with the aftershock of ruin. To his men he speaks slowly, his voice low and deliberate. Order, he says. This is what the world must learn. There is no empire without obedience, no beauty without blood. His words drift into the wind, half swallowed by the falling snow.
The men nod, though some do not understand. Some do not wish to. He turns his gaze eastward, where the sun struggles to pierce the clouds. The light catches his ring, the iron circle forged from shattered swords, and glints like a cruel promise. But within his silence something moves, a thought that does not belong to the conqueror. He does not name it, but it lingers behind his eyes like smoke that refuses to fade. He tells himself that destruction is the first act of creation, that fire is not evil, only pure, that the world must be burned before it can be rebuilt. And yet, even as he believes it, he feels the cold deeper than before. The soldiers move to collect what can be salvaged: grain, steel, the living. The moans of the wounded carry faintly through the alleys, mingling with the hiss of wind through broken doors. A child's cry rises once and is swallowed by silence. Timur walks alone through what was the heart of the city. The great bazaar lies open to the sky. Silks hang in tatters, bright colors dimmed by soot. A stall of brass lamps still glows faintly where the embers refuse to die. He stops before them. Their light flickers across his face, gold trembling upon scar and shadow. He closes his eyes, and for a moment he sees another city. Not this, not ruin, but marble. Marble and water and gardens that stretch like paradise reborn. Towers gleaming with turquoise. Courtyards carved with verses. A place that would make the heavens themselves envy man. He opens his eyes again. The lamps gutter out one by one. Behind him, the wind shifts. He hears the faint flutter of wings. A raven descends, black against the white world. It lands upon a broken wall, its feathers glossy with frost. Its eyes, dark, liquid, knowing, fix upon him. The bird cries once, a sharp, hollow sound. It echoes through the dead city like the voice of something ancient. Timur watches it without moving. He has heard that sound before, on other battlefields, over other graves. Yet tonight it feels different, closer. He turns away. The snow continues to fall, covering footprints, bodies, memories. In a few days, even the shape of Esfahan will be gone beneath it. That night, the horizon burns. The army's campfires line the plain, 1,000 stars fallen to earth. The air hums with the dull rhythm of hammers and low, murmured prayers. Men speak softly, afraid to disturb the night. Horses stamp and snort, their breath curling like ghosts. Timur sits within his tent, alone. The firs around him shimmer with frost. Before him lies a map, Persia, India, the world beyond. His hand traces the inked rivers, the mountains that stand between him and destiny. But the lines blur. His thoughts drift back to the silence of Esfahan, to the woman with the clay figure, to the raven's cry. For the first time in many years, sleep comes to him not as rest, but as trial. He dreams. He walks through a city of marble and gold, the city he has yet to build. Its walls gleam like dawn, its gardens overflow with life. But everywhere he turns, he finds eyes watching him. Not of soldiers or kings, but of the dead, the faceless, the nameless, the forgotten. Their gaze is not accusing, it is worse, it is patient. He reaches for the gates of this perfect city, but they are sealed. Beneath his hand, the marble is cold as bone. From above, a shadow passes, the beating of vast wings. The raven again, circling, crying. Its voice splits the silence like a blade. He wakes. The tent is dark. The fire has died. Only the wind answers. Timur sits for a long time, unmoving, listening to the whisper of the steppe outside, a sound older than empires. He reaches for his ring, turns it between his fingers, and watches the faint glint of metal catch the dying embers. He tells himself the same truth he has always known. Mercy is weakness. The world remembers only the strong. And yet, somewhere beneath those words, another thought flickers, faint as the last light of a dying flame. He cannot name it. He does not try. Outside, the snow begins again, soft, endless, pure. It drapes the world in silence. It hides the dead. It erases the footsteps of conquerors. When dawn comes, the city of Esfahan will be nothing but white. And Timur will ride onward, toward the next city, the next dream, the next ruin to be remade. But somewhere behind him, a single raven waits upon a broken wall, black against the snow.
It watches him go. It does not blink. And in the hush of the frozen morning, its cry lingers, a wound in the wind, a promise in the ashes, a reminder that even the greatest empire must one day answer its own silence. The wind moves across the desert like a whisper of something ancient, a low, endless murmur carrying sand, silence, and memory. The sky above burns red, deep as a wound. Beneath it, Timur's army halts, a sea of tents and weary men, iron glinting dull beneath the dying sun. Camels groan under the weight of plunder, silks torn from Persian halls, idols ripped from temples, gold that once adorned the necks of queens. The air is thick with dust and the faint scent of blood that refuses to fade, no matter how many fires are lit. Swords scrape against whetstones in rhythm, slow, deliberate, inevitable. Each stroke is a promise. The soldiers do not sing tonight. The laughter that once carried through campfires is gone. They are too tired to speak, too loyal to question. They have followed their master across rivers of flame and fields of bones. And now, as the wind howls across the dunes, they wait for orders, for dawn, for the next war that will turn their names to echoes. In the heart of the camp stands a tent vast as a cathedral, its silken walls trembling under the breath of the storm. From within, light spills faintly, gold against the red dust, like the heartbeat of a hidden star.
Inside sits Timur. He is alone, surrounded by the trophies of his victories, jeweled goblets crusted with rubies, maps marked with the ink of destiny, and in a small crystal box, a single strand of hair from a queen whose name the wind has long since forgotten. These are not possessions. They are reminders of conquest, of transience, of the fragility of beauty before the march of time. The tent is silent, save for the soft rasp of his quill as it moves across parchment. He writes with the patience of inevitability, his hand steady even as the ink darkens like blood under candlelight. Each letter is a blade, each word a seed of submission sown across distant lands. To the king of Hindustan, he writes, the earth itself trembles with the news of your hesitation. Do not mistake my patience for mercy. To the Sultan of the West, he writes next, there is no fortress high enough to keep the wind from carrying my name to your gates. The ink glistens. His eyes, cold and unwavering, move with purpose known only to him. These are not letters. They are prophecies, carried on parchment and fear. Outside, the wind shifts again. A falcon circles high above the dunes, its cry piercing the silence, sharp, solitary, untamed. Timur looks up. For a moment, his hand stills. He watches the birds' lonely dance against the crimson horizon. How strange, he thinks, that a creature so bound to freedom lives only by obedience. Its wings belong to the sky, yet it flies where it is commanded. He sees in it a reflection of himself, a ruler bound to his own destiny, chained not by others, but by the very will that set him above them. He whispers, half to the falcon, half to the emptiness around him. Even the free are prisoners of purpose.
The flap of the tent stirs. A servant enters quietly, head bowed low. In his hands he carries a bronze mirror, polished until it gleams like still water. He kneels before the conqueror and raises it. Timur gestures for him to leave. The tent grows colder. The wind claws faintly at the walls. Timur leans forward and gazes into the mirror. For a long while, he says nothing. The reflection stares back, scarred, severe, eternal. The face of a man who has turned the world into a map of his will. Yet beneath the scars, there is something else, the shadow of what he was before the crown, before the wars, before the blood. He traces the edge of his jaw with a gloved hand. The candle flickers, distorting his image, splitting it into two, the man and the memory, the conqueror and the child of the steppe. His voice breaks the silence, soft, uncertain, human. Who rules the mirror, he murmurs, the man or the memory? The words hang in the air like smoke. The tent gives no answer. Only the wind moves, sighing through the seams of the fabric, like the breath of a ghost. He turns the mirror face down upon the table. The bronze thuds softly against the wood. For an instant, the world seems to darken, as if even the candles are reluctant to witness what he hides. Beyond the tent, the storm begins to build. The dunes shift like living creatures, and lightning flickers along the horizon, silent, distant, prophetic. The soldiers pull their cloaks tighter and whisper prayers to gods who no longer intervene. Inside, Timur unrolls another map. It shows the world as he believes it should be, whole, obedient, luminous under his reign. Yet as his eyes travel across it, something in his gaze hardens. The world has no edges, only new beginnings of conquest. And he, caught between creator and destroyer, feels the weight of eternity pressing upon his shoulders. He dips his quill once more, but this time it hesitates above the parchment. The ink drips, one dark tear that stains the map's corner. He watches it spread. It looks like blood soaking into the earth. A faint tremor of thunder rolls through the ground, deep and low, like the drums of the earth remembering his name. The tent shivers with its echo. Timur closes his eyes and listens. The sound is both warning and affirmation. The voice of fate itself, restless, circling. He breathes deeply, the scent of ink and metal filling his lungs. The candlelight dances over his armor, turning steel to gold, gold to shadow. Outside, the falcon cries again, nearer now, as if drawn to him by some invisible thread. He opens his eyes and speaks to the empty air. "Let them fear," he says quietly. "Let them understand." The wind answers with another rumble of thunder. Later, when the camp lies sleeping and the fires burn low, Timur steps outside. The sky above is vast, the stars scattered like embers across black silk. The sand stretches endless, swallowing all trace of the world. He stands alone, the storm's edge brushing against him, cool and sharp. The falcon perches upon a nearby pole, feathers ruffled, eyes gleaming. For a moment, conqueror and bird regard each other in silence. Two creatures born for dominion, both tethered, both longing for the sky. The wind rises again, carrying the scent of rain and faraway wars. Timur turns his gaze eastward, toward the unseen lands his armies will soon march upon. His cloak flutters like a banner in the darkness. Behind him, the thunder growls once more, not distant now, but close, pulsing through the sand like a heartbeat. He looks once more at the horizon, and in the brief flash of lightning, his face is carved in stark relief, half shadow, half flame. The storm will break by morning. The march will begin again. But tonight, beneath the blood-red sky, the world pauses. Even the desert holds its breath, waiting for the man who would master it.
and for the silence that will follow when his echo fades. 1,000 lamps burn in the halls of Samarkand, their light trembling like captured stars. Beneath chandeliers of silver and glass, Timur's court glows, not with the heat of conquest, but with the cool shimmer of creation. The air smells of rosewater and ink, of parchment drying beneath steady hands. Poets murmur verses to the rhythm of quills. Mathematicians whisper of hidden patterns within the turning sky. Somewhere a scribe drops a pen, and the sound, so small, so human, echoes like the fall of an empire in miniature. Here, for a fleeting moment, the world is quiet. No screams from battlefields, no drums of war. Only the hum of thought, the murmur of the mind. Timur moves among them like a shadow carved in silk. The conqueror who had crushed kingdoms now walks between scholars as if treading upon sacred ground. His eyes, once filled with the reflection of burning cities, now rest upon scrolls of geometry and the diagrams of stars. He watches as his grandson, Ulugh Beg, bends over a vast parchment strewn with constellations. The boy's hands are steady, his gaze lifted towards something the sword could never reach, the heavens. "Build," Timur whispers, voice roughened by years of command, "what the sword cannot destroy." The words linger in the air like prayer. The marble walls seem to breathe in response, their veins of blue stone glowing faintly beneath torchlight. Beyond the palace, Samarkand itself hums with transformation. The once war-torn city now rises like a phoenix from dust, its minarets piercing the dawn, its domes glittering with turquoise tiles that catch the first light of morning. Markets fill with the languages of the earth: Persian, Arabic, Mongol, Greek. Caravans from China unload silk that smells faintly of the sea. Traders from Delhi bring ivory wrapped in velvet. The city has become a heart that beats for the world, its pulse quickened by ambition and gold. And yet, the roads that lead here are red. In the shadows of its beauty lie the bones of the nameless. Slaves drag stones for palaces they will never enter. Villages emptied to feed the empire now whisper only with wind. Famine gnaws at the edges of distant provinces, while the court feasts on sugared almonds and roasted lamb. Every jewel in Timur's crown is weighed against a life forgotten. Still, within the marble halls, the music continues. A musician sits in the courtyard, the oud resting on his knee. His fingers pluck the strings, and a slow, mournful melody unfurls, low at first, then blooming like dusk. It is not a song of victory, nor of praise, but of memory, of things lost to time, and of beauty's quiet defiance against decay.
The notes drift through the corridors, climbing to the vaulted ceilings painted with constellations. Astronomers pause their calculations, listening. The hum of intellect stills. For a moment, all of Samarkand seems to hold its breath. Timur closes his eyes. The music moves through him like confession. He feels again the fires of Delhi, the cold blood of Isfahan, the cries of cities swallowed by dust. He remembers the towers of skulls, the rivers that ran red. He remembers the faces, not of kings, but of the children who stared as the storm passed over them. He breathes deeply, but the air tastes of ash. Perhaps beauty, he thinks, is the soul's rebellion against the grave. He opens his eyes again and looks to Ulughbeg, Beg, who stands by the half-built observatory rising beyond the palace walls, a tower of stone and starlight, scaffolds wrapped like ribs around a body still forming. Workers climb its bones under a burning sun, their sweat glinting as though they labor not for gold, but for heaven itself. The boy speaks softly, not to his grandfather, but to the sky. If we can measure the stars, he murmurs, perhaps we can understand our place beneath them. Timur studies him, the clarity in his voice, the serenity that no conqueror has ever known. Pride stirs within him, not sharp like victory, but soft like forgiveness. This boy will build something that even the storms of empire cannot unmake. And yet, even as the tower climbs toward the heavens, the empire begins to tremble beneath its own weight. Reports arrive from the edges of the realm. Rebellions in the west, famine in the steppe, whispers of old allies turning restless. The blood that built this beauty has begun to curdle. Night falls again over Samarkand. Timur sits alone in his chamber, a single lamp flickering beside him. Maps stretch before him, the familiar veins of his dominion. But the ink has begun to fade, the lines to blur. He touches the parchment, and for the first time it feels fragile, not like a promise, but like a wound. He hears again the musician's melody drifting faintly through the courtyard. It seems to come from far away now, as if carried from another world entirely. Each note rises like a memory and dissolves into the silence between breaths. He speaks to the empty room, voice barely above a whisper. Power fades, but beauty, perhaps, endures. The words tremble, then fall into stillness. Outside, the observatory gleams under the moonlight, its unfinished dome a mirror to the sky. Workers have left their tools. The scaffolding creaks softly in the wind. From its highest point, Ulughbeg stands watching the heavens, his face lit by starlight. He does not see the empire's decay, only the infinite order above. To him, every star is a word written by God, every constellation a memory of balance. He will one day map their positions with such precision that scholars centuries hence will speak his name in reverence. But for now, he is only a boy with a dream, unaware that the foundation beneath him is already cracking. The wind sighs through the city, carrying with it the scent of rosewater and distant ruin. In the courtyards below, the oud has gone silent. The musician's place is empty, his chair overturned by the breeze.
Only the echo of his final note lingers, soft, uncertain, eternal.
Timur stands at his window, looking toward the horizon where the desert begins. Beyond that line of darkness lie the roads that bled to build this paradise. He feels the weight of it, of every conquest, every stone, every silence that bought the light. He closes his eyes. The music returns, not in sound, but in memory. And as the night deepens, the city glows like a dream suspended between glory and ruin. Soon the storm will return, not of swords, but of time. But for this breath, for this heartbeat beneath the starlit dome of Samarkand, the empire holds. The conqueror listens, the stars endure. And the song of what might outlast him, plays on. The storm comes without mercy. A horizon of black clouds swallows the steppe, and the wind howls like a wounded god. Lightning carves the sky into jagged shards of silver, forking across the endless grasslands where Timur's army trudges onward, a river of men and iron flowing through a world of mud and thunder. The air is alive with the scent of rain and steel. Every hoofbeat sinks into the trembling earth. Every breath tastes of dust and devotion. Above them, banners whip violently, soaked and heavy, their crimson threads snapping in the gale like the tongues of gods demanding sacrifice. The empire's insignia, 3 crescents, pale as bone, catches the lightning for an instant before vanishing again into darkness. And beneath those crescents walks a boy. He cannot be more than 17. His fingers, raw and trembling, clutch the pole that bears the mark of destiny. The standard sways under the storm's fury, and his arms ache from holding it aloft. Yet he does not falter, for this banner, this symbol, is more than silk and gold. It is faith itself. It is Timur's will made visible. He glances toward the figure ahead, the man who commands the storm. Timur, the crippled wolf of Samarkand. His armor glimmers with rain, his fur-lined cloak plastered to his shoulders. Beneath the iron and leather, he is still flesh, still mortal, but to his men he is something more. They believe the earth bends to him, that lightning strikes where he points, that fate itself kneels at his feet. He lifts his sword. The blade catches the stormlight, a silver fang against the night. He shouts something into the wind, words torn away before they can reach his men, devoured by the roar of the heavens. But they hear him nonetheless, not the words, but the meaning. They see the fire in his eyes, the defiance in his stance, and it is enough. From the rear lines to the vanguard, voices rise in unison, 1,000 throats crying his name into the tempest. Timur! Their war cry merges with the thunder until man and storm are one. Mud clings to everything. It swallows boots, dulls armor, drowns the scent of death in its cold embrace. The storm becomes a trial, a ritual of endurance, and still they march.
The young standard-bearer stumbles once, his knee sinking deep into the mire. The banner nearly falls, nearly, before he thrusts it upright again, gasping. His teeth chatter, his lips cracked from the cold. He thinks of home, of warmth, of the small stone hearth his mother kept burning even in famine. But that world is gone now. In its place stands this, the long shadow of Timur, stretching across creation.
When lightning flashes again, he sees the faces around him, gaunt, hardened, eyes hollowed by conquest and hunger. Yet within them a strange light burns, not joy, not pride, but something older, purpose. They march not for gold nor for glory. They march because the storm has no end, and to stop would be to vanish beneath it. Timur rides at the head of the host, his horse's hooves striking sparks from the stone beneath the mud. His breath steams in the freezing air. Inside his armor, his leg aches, the old wound, the mark of the arrow that had changed his fate. Pain hums in the bone, a constant reminder of mortality. Once that pain had been shame, now it is prophecy. He calls himself Timur the Lame, not to conceal the wound, but to crown it. The limp has become his legend, the scar his throne. Yet, beneath the iron calm, something gnaws at him. A thought, small but persistent, like a whisper beneath the thunder. He can command nations. He can build cities of marble and gold. But he cannot command time. His reflection, when he dares to look upon it, has begun to betray him. The beard grown white at the edges, the eyes ringed with fatigue, the tremor in his hand that no soldier dares notice. Immortality, he thinks, is not in the flesh. It is in the echo, in the fear that lingers after your bones are dust. He looks up again, toward the storm, as though it were heaven itself. Lightning answers, bright and merciless. He raises his sword once more, its edge catching the light, and in that brief illumination, every man sees him as he sees himself, not as a man, but as a force carved from destiny's own hand. Hours pass. The storm begins to break. Rain turns to mist, soft as breath upon steel. The sky, once furious, fades into a gray silence. All that remains is the rhythmic beat, the steady, eternal sound of hooves striking wet earth. The men say nothing. They march beneath the bruised heavens like ghosts between worlds. The young standard-bearer looks ahead and sees the faint outline of Timur's banner cresting the next ridge. His arms ache, his shoulders burn, but he follows. He tells himself that if he can reach that rise, just that rise, he will rest. But when he crests it, the view steals his breath. Below stretches the horizon, vast, endless, and beyond it, the faint shimmer of fires. A city. Its walls rising from the plain like a crown of stone. Timur halts his horse. The army stills. For a moment, all is silence.
the storm, the wind, even the heartbeat of the earth. Only the faint hiss of rain on armor remains. Timur looks upon the city and feels the weight of his years press upon him. He knows what must come: the siege, the slaughter, the burning. Every empire is built on the ruins of another. He believes this. He must. Yet the silence before the storm always feels like confession. He lifts his hand, not yet a command, not yet destruction, but the breath before it. A raven lands upon a broken tree nearby, shaking the water from its feathers. It caws once, sharp and hollow, before taking flight again into the gray. Timur watches it go. Then, quietly, almost tenderly, he whispers to no one. The gods send omens to men who still listen. The standard-bearer lowers his eyes. He cannot tell whether those words are victory or warning. The rain resumes, soft and steady, tapping against iron and leather like an ancient drumbeat. A heartbeat older than kingdoms, older than kings. And as Timur rides forward into the mist, that sound follows, the rhythm of empire, of blood, of time itself marching on. It will carry them toward the next dawn, the next conquest, the next silence, where thunder will be replaced by fire, and the name of Timur will echo once more, like the storm remembering its master. The year wanes. Winter clings to the domes of Samarkand like frost upon a dying flame. Within the jeweled chambers of his palace, Timur sits alone, the great lion of the steppe, now wrapped in the stillness of his own legend. The air tastes of pomegranate and incense. A brazier hisses softly, the scent of sandalwood rising like a ghost. His hand, once steady enough to sign the deaths of kings, trembles as it lifts the goblet. Red wine swirls within it, thick like blood under the setting sun. He drinks, but the warmth does not reach him. The halls around him breathe with whispers. Courtiers glide like shadows across marble floors, their silks murmuring in careful rhythm. They praise his glory, each word gilded with fear, for they have seen what becomes of those who displease him: the silence, the sudden vanishing. Yet tonight, Timur hears none of them. His mind drifts beyond the palace walls, beyond the cities razed and razed by his command, back to the boundless steppe where he was born beneath a sky that never ended. He remembers the wind there, cold, sharp, honest. He remembers the sound of hooves upon the frozen earth, the breath of horses steaming in dawn's blue light. He remembers hunger and the fierce joy of conquest when his banner first rose over a burning gate. But that was another life, lived by another man. Now the conqueror of worlds sits surrounded by marble and gold, and feels nothing but the slow decay of breath. His physicians speak in hushed voices beyond the curtain. He does not sleep, one murmurs. The body grows weaker, says another. And then, softer still, the conqueror of worlds is conquered by his own breath. Timur hears. He always hears. A single glance from his clouded eyes silences them all. He gestures for maps to be brought, not prayers, not medicine, but maps. The parchment trembles as it is unrolled before him, its surface sprawling with rivers and mountains, cities that burn like embers across continents. His finger traces the edge of empire, toward the east, toward China. His final dream, his last campaign. Here, he rasps, voice breaking like dry reeds. Here we will ride. The courtiers bow, the generals nod. None dare to remind him that his body can scarcely stand, that his empire already groans beneath its own weight, that sons and grandsons sharpen knives behind closed doors. The ink bleeds upon the parchment as his grip falters. The brush falls from his hand, leaving a red smear that spreads across the map like the memory of conquest.
Outside, the fountains murmur softly, their waters warmed by hidden fires beneath the marble floors. The same fires that feed the winter gardens where roses bloom beneath the snow. The empire he forged has learned to bend the earth itself to his will. Yet in this hour, the man who shaped the world feels only the weight of time pressing upon his bones. He rises slowly, painfully, and walks to the window. Beyond the glass, the city of Samarkand glows like a crown of stars. Minarets pierce the night sky. The domes shimmer under moonlight, blue as the heavens he once prayed beneath. The murmuring of the city drifts upward, merchants calling through the alleys, distant laughter, a child crying somewhere in the maze of streets. Life goes on, indifferent to the man who once commanded it all. Timur presses his hand to the cold glass. His reflection stares back, the scarred face, the pale lips, the eyes that have seen the fall of kingdoms. He whispers, "Is this victory or exile?" The question lingers in the chamber like smoke. He dreams often now, dreams of his youth, of the steppe before the wars, before the weight of thrones. He dreams of the endless horizon, wind and grass and freedom. But the dream always ends the same, a storm rising over the plains, banners snapping like tongues of fire, and his own younger self disappearing into the thunder. When he wakes, he calls for his standard, the banner of 3 crescents, symbol of his destiny. It is brought before him, still stained from a dozen campaigns. He reaches for it, but his hands cannot lift the pole. His fingers tremble, curling instead around the cloth, pressing it to his chest. "The steppe," he murmurs, "I will return to the steppe." But even the steppe has forgotten him. The court prepares for the great expedition, the march eastward. Horses are gathered, weapons sharpened, provisions weighed. Thousands wait in the cold for a command that will never come. In the deep of night, a storm begins to rise. The same wind that once carried his name across empires now claws at the palace gates. The torches flicker.
Somewhere within the labyrinth of chambers, a goblet falls, and crimson wine spills across the tiles. A slow, spreading pool beneath a motionless hand. The palace holds its breath. No one dares to speak. When dawn breaks, Samarkand wakes beneath a heavy silence. The drums that once thundered in victory beat now for mourning. The conqueror's chamber is sealed. Outside, the fountains still whisper, their waters glinting like tears. Timur the Great, Lord of Iron, has fallen, not to blade or betrayal, but to the frailty that claims all men. His empire, vast as it was, trembles without his shadow to bind it. His sons begin to scheme, his generals weigh their loyalties. And somewhere beyond the city walls, on the open plain where the wind never ceases, a single raven circles above the steppe. The horizon stretches wide and empty, as if waiting to swallow his name. But the dust remembers. The earth he conquered will keep his story, not in triumph, but in silence. The storm has passed. The banners hang still, and in that stillness the world holds its breath, for the shadow of empire has only begun to fall.
The sound of distant thunder returning, faint and far, as if from another age. The next chapter begins in the wake of that silence. They wrap him in white linen at dawn. The air hangs heavy, a silence so vast it feels alive, as if the very stones of Samarkand are holding their breath. Snow drifts down in slow, mournful spirals, softening the sharp edges of marble and memory alike. The bells toll once, one deep, sonorous cry that trembles through the cold, and then they fall silent. The conqueror is gone, and for the first time his city does not move. Within the courtyard, the scent of myrrh and cold iron fills the air. The generals kneel in a row beside the black stone slab, heads bowed, faces pale as ash. These were men who once rode through burning cities, their swords wet with empire. Now they kneel before the still body of the man who made them gods. Their loyalty without anchor, their futures without orbit. The linen gleams white against the dark stone. Beneath it, the outline of a warrior, one leg twisted, one arm rigid, the body that once defied time, now claimed by it. A mullah steps forward, his voice rising in trembling cadence. The verses of the Quran drift like smoke, curling into the chill of dawn. Each word shivers through the crowd. From dust we came, and to dust we shall return. But here even the dust hesitates. For this is Timur, the Lord of Iron, the scourge of kings, the man who forged an empire from the bones of his enemies. To speak of his death
feels like blasphemy against the natural order. The people watch from behind the arches, nobles in embroidered cloaks, soldiers with bandaged hands, widows clutching their children. The city that once trembled beneath his command now trembles beneath his absence. In the front of the crowd, a small boy stands beside his father, a mason's son, no older than 8. His cheeks are flushed from the cold, his hands calloused from the chisel he grips too tightly. He does not understand the meaning of empire or legacy, only that the world feels heavier today. The father leans close, whispering, "Watch, my son, the stones remember what men forget." The boy nods, silent, eyes fixed on the slab where the conqueror lies. He does not yet know that one day his hands will shape the resting place of this fallen titan. The snow continues to fall, coating helmets, prayer beads, and the curve of the falcon statue above the gate. Then a sound breaks the stillness, the flap of wings. High above, a lone falcon circles through the golden light of dawn, tracing slow orbits over the city. Its cry echoes faintly across the domes, a sound too wild, too free for this hour of grief. Some whisper that it is an omen, the soul of Timur, unbound at last, surveying the realm he carved and the silence he leaves behind. Others bow their heads deeper, unwilling to look toward the sky. Inside the palace, servants move like ghosts, extinguishing torches one by one. The halls that once roared with command now echo only the creak of wood, the hiss of melting snow, the low murmur of prayers. Every corner smells faintly of myrrh and fear.
A general, Ulugh Beg's uncle, his beard streaked with frost, places his hand upon the shroud. His voice is hoarse, cracked from sleeplessness. He dreamed of China, he whispers, not to the others, but to the corpse itself. He thought death would wait for one more conquest. His fingers tighten around the linen, but death has no borders. No one answers. Around him, the generals stare at one another, men who once shared the same oath, now weighing what remains. Behind their silence, the great machine of empire begins to groan, an invisible shifting of power, of fear, of ambition. The mullah finishes his recitation. The last syllables dissolve into the cold air, and a strange quiet settles. Not peace, but something deeper, the kind of stillness that comes before collapse. Timur's body is lifted by 12 men, the weight of him shocking in its finality. They carry him through the courtyard toward the tomb that does not yet exist, only a dream in marble, yet to be cut, yet to be named. The crowd parts like water, the murmurs following him like a tide. The Iron Lord has fallen. His shadow will rise again. No grave can hold the storm. The boy watches as they pass. The linen glows faintly beneath the sun's first touch.
as if light itself bends to farewell him. He feels a strange ache in his chest, not sorrow, not fear, but awe. Later, when the crowd disperses, the boy lingers in the courtyard. His father calls to him, but he stays, pressing his small palm against the slab of black stone. The surface is cold, slick with melting snow. "He was real," he whispers, as if saying it will keep the memory from fading. Above him, the falcon still circles, slower now, its shadow sweeping across domes and minarets. The day moves on, but the city does not return to life. Markets remain shuttered. Fountains run silent. The wind itself seems to hesitate at the gates. The silence spreads, seeping into every corner of Samarkand, into its gardens, its workshops, its temples. By nightfall, the stars hang low and dim. Within the palace, Timur's throne sits empty, its gold gleaming faintly in the lamplight. A single candle burns beside it, its flame trembling, uncertain. The generals gather once more. There are no proclamations, no crowns placed upon new heads, only glances, sharp, fleeting, heavy with the scent of betrayal. The empire they built now waits, like a beast unsure of its next master. Beyond the city walls, the wind sweeps across the plains, the same endless steppe that bore him into the world. Snow whirls in the darkness, covering tracks, erasing borders. The falcon drifts eastward, vanishing into the clouds. In the stillness that follows, the boy's father leads him into the workshop. "We will begin tomorrow," he says softly, unrolling a piece of parchment, the design for a tomb. The boy looks at the lines drawn there, domes like heaven, arches like prayer. His fingers brush the chisel, the tool that will shape stone into memory. Outside, the bells of Samarkand toll once more, not for death, but for remembrance. And as the sound fades into the distance, the city exhales. The empire sleeps, its heartbeat hidden beneath marble and snow. But the silence has only just begun to speak.
The screen darkens. The faint outline of a tomb begins to form. The resting place of a man who thought he could command eternity. In the next chapter, the story will descend into the shadow that follows the fall, the empire without its master. A cold wind drifts across the plains where empires once marched. It whispers through crumbling towers, through broken gates that no longer guard anything but memory. The banners of Samarkand, once bright with crimson crescents, hang tattered and pale, their silk eaten by dust and time. Years have passed. The Iron Lord is gone, and his empire, that colossal dream forged in flame and fear, fractures like glass beneath a hammer. Princes rise, brothers turn upon brothers, each seeking to inherit the storm that once obeyed only one man's command.
The roads that once thundered with the march of armies now lie silent, haunted by the echo of hooves. The same stones that bore witness to conquest now cradle decay. But amid the ruin, something endures. A faint pulse beneath the rubble, a memory that refuses to die. In the heart of Samarkand, beyond the reach of swords and ambition, the domes still glimmer, turquoise against the endless blue. Beneath them, in the madrasas and observatories, the children of the empire bend over parchment, tracing the letters of knowledge with trembling hands. They whisper the old stories in the candlelight of a man who dreamed in fire, who built a world upon the edge of chaos. To them, Timur is not a tyrant nor a god, but a legend, a wound that still glows faintly beneath the skin of history. And among them walks his blood, Ulugh Beg, grandson of the conqueror, son of the empire's twilight. He does not wear armor, nor speak in thunder. His hands are stained not with blood, but with ink. Where his grandfather rode into battle, Ulugh Beg walks among scrolls, astrolabes, and the quiet hum of calculation. His crown is humility, his battlefield the heavens. By night he climbs the steps of his observatory, a tower of stone and silence that pierces the Samarkand sky. The air is sharp, filled with the scent of dust and distant rain. Above him, the stars unfold, endless, unbroken, unafraid. He stands beneath them as others once stood beneath the banners of war. But his gaze is not upon the earth, not upon kingdoms or walls or gold. His eyes are fixed on infinity. Where others measured conquest, he murmurs, tracing his fingers along a celestial chart, I will measure truth. The great dome of his observatory gleams in the moonlight, a temple not of faith, but of reason. Within, instruments of brass and wood glimmer like relics of some forgotten age. The quadrant, vast and solemn, the armillary sphere, a cage of stars. Scrolls covered in constellations that no poet could name. Here, empire takes a gentler shape. Here, the sword becomes a compass. He marks the paths of planets, names the stars anew, and builds tables of motion so precise that centuries later scholars will still bow to his genius. He speaks to the sky as if to an old friend, patient, distant, eternal. And sometimes, in the stillness, the wind through the arches sounds like the echo of horses, the faint, rhythmic drum of a past that refuses to rest. Outside the observatory walls, the empire decays. Princes spill blood over borders, and cities burn again beneath banners of revenge. But Ulugh Beg's light does not waver. Each night, as fires consume the earth, he records the heavens with unwavering calm. For he has seen what endures. He has understood that the true empire lies not in men, but in the constancy of stars.
There are those who call him weak, a scholar unfit for a throne, a dreamer lost in numbers while his kingdom crumbles. And perhaps they are right. For while he maps the galaxies, the conspiracies beneath his feet begin to take shape. His courtiers whisper of rebellion, his generals trade loyalty for silver. Even his own son, drawn by the hunger that once moved their bloodline, begins to plot in shadow. Yet Ulugh Beg does not turn his gaze from the sky. To him, betrayal is as constant as gravity. He watches the planets revolve, each one bound by invisible law, and wonders whether men are any different. Sometimes, alone at the edge of dawn, he speaks into the wind as though addressing his grandfather's ghost. You conquered the earth, Timur, but it could not hold you. I seek the one kingdom you never claimed, the kingdom above. The stars flicker in answer, not in mercy, not in mockery, but in silence. And so the years drift by, each night measured in light. His observatory becomes a beacon. Scholars travel from distant lands to study by his side, to learn from the man who seeks order in a world dissolving into chaos. They call him the Astronomer King. But even kings who reach for the heavens cannot escape the dust. When death comes for Ulugh Beg, it is not with armies or thunder. It comes with a whisper, a blade drawn quietly in the dark, not from an enemy, but from blood. His son, drunk on the illusion of power, signs his doom. And as Ulugh Beg's life bleeds out upon the marble floor, the last thing he sees is the night sky, clear, vast, infinite. He smiles faintly. Empires fade, but the stars remain faithful. In the years that follow, the observatory falls silent. Its instruments gather dust, its scrolls are scattered. Yet even in ruin it stands, a monument to a different conquest. And in time, when the city of Samarkand becomes a whisper among the dunes, travelers will still climb that hill. They will stand where Ulugh Beg once stood and look upward. And they will see the same constellations, the same cold fire that he saw centuries before. Above them, the sky stretches unbroken, ancient, merciless, eternal. And somewhere in that endless expanse, between the silence of dust and the glow of stars, the dream of Timur still lingers. Not as empire, but as remembrance. The screen fades to black. A faint echo of wind carries the sound of a quill scratching parchment. The next chapter will awaken beneath that same sky, where the empire's memory becomes myth, and myth becomes the soil of legend. The candlelight trembles in the tomb. Its small flame dances upon the marble walls, flickering across words carved by trembling hands centuries ago, words meant to bind eternity in stone. Words meant to bind eternity in stone. Whosoever disturbs my rest, let him face the wrath of the dead. The air itself seems to remember that vow. The thief does not read the inscription. His breathing is ragged, uneven.
the sound of hunger echoing off cold tile. He has not eaten in 2 days. His wife lies fevered beneath a torn blanket. His children sleep on straw. Gold, he tells himself, just a trinket, just enough to survive another dawn.
His torch sputters, its smoke rising like incense before the spirit of a king. Around him silence holds court. The walls of Guri Amir whisper in their stillness. The blue mosaics have faded to shadow, and the great dome, once a sapphire lantern in the desert night, now shelters only dust and legend. Yet beneath that dust lies something heavy, invisible, alive. The thief feels it before he sees it, a weight pressing through centuries, a memory coiled and waiting. He kneels beside the marble tomb. The stone is colder than he imagined, smooth like frozen water. He runs his trembling fingers along the calligraphy, tracing letters he cannot read. When he presses his palm flat upon the seal, a shiver passes through the earth itself. Somewhere beyond the tomb, a candle dies. Somewhere, wind enters the chamber, uninvited. And in that breathless dark, the air begins to hum, not the sound of wind nor of spirit, but of memory, a low, distant thunder rolling beneath the soil. He staggers back, dropping his torch. Its flame sputters, rolls, dies. And in that final second of light, he swears he sees the marble pulse, just once, faintly, as if exhaling. Then silence, a silence thick as stone. The thief flees, stumbling through the crypt's long throat of corridors, his heart drumming louder than his steps. Behind him, the dark closes its jaws. Outside, the night is heavy and ancient. Samarkand sleeps, but the wind does not. It moves through the alleyways and over the domes, curling around the madrasas where students murmur verses of forgotten stars. It gathers sand and memory, carrying both east and west, until it reaches the plain beyond the city walls, where once, long ago, horsemen thundered beneath a burning sun. The wind remembers them, and tonight it carries the echo of hooves. For centuries, Timur's city had stood like a heartbeat in the desert, beating slower now, softer. The age of swords had ended. The age of trade had begun. Caravans wound through the dust, not armies. Their banners were not crimson, but silk. Their weapons were scales and ledgers. Empires of paper and ink now rose where empires of steel had fallen. Yet Samarkand remained, proud, faded, dreaming. Its markets no longer roared, but murmured. The domes still shone at sunset, though fewer candles burned beneath them. Scholars argued over the stars. Merchants weighed gold against rumor. The call to prayer still hung in the air like a promise. But beneath that hum, there was something else, a kind of waiting, a city holding its breath. The people told stories in the tea houses of a king who would rise again when his tomb was disturbed, of a curse that bound the empire's bones to its soil. Children listened with wide eyes as the elders spoke of Timur's wrath, how even death could not silence a conqueror who had built with fire and blood.
But the young did not believe. The new age had no room for ghosts. And yet, the whisper persisted. That night, as the thief ran through the streets, gasping, wild-eyed, something unseen followed him. Not a shadow, not a spirit, but remembrance. The past had shifted in its grave.
In the quiet chambers of the observatory, now half in ruin, the wind passed through broken arches, rattling the bronze instruments that once measured the heavens. Their dials turned faintly, moved by nothing but air, like ancient prayers stirring in their sleep. A scholar looked up from his candle, startled. He thought he heard a horse cry, distant as a dream. He thought he saw the stars tremble. And for a moment, just a moment, Samarkand seemed to wake. But morning came as it always did, slow, pale, indifferent. The thief was never seen again. Some said he fled into the steppe, cursed and mad. Others swore his body was found days later, face down in the Zarafshan River, his hands still clenched around sand. No one dared to open the tomb again. Years would pass before another set of hands, foreign ones, would dare lift that seal. They would come with shovels, cameras, and notebooks, not swords. And when they did, the world itself would tremble. But that belongs to another chapter. For now, Samarkand endures in silence. The dust still gathers on the marble. The warning still gleams faintly in the candlelight. The city breathes beneath the stars, old, tired, but unbroken. And somewhere deep beneath its stones, a king still sleeps, his dreams echoing through the centuries. The wind passes once more over his tomb, carrying with it the faintest sound, a whisper, a heartbeat, the memory of hooves, the past remembering itself. Fade to black. The air is dry, the kind that stings the throat and turns every breath to dust. Boots strike the ground in rhythm, hundreds of them, echoing through the broken gates of Samarkand. Their banners are alien, red stars, iron symbols, fluttering over a city that once glowed like the heart of the world. Now its domes are fractured mirrors, its palaces hollow, its silence immense. Centuries have passed, yet the air still smells faintly of smoke and prayer. The soldiers do not look up. They have orders, not wonder. Their trucks groan over cobbled streets laid by men who once called themselves eternal. Engines rumble where war elephants once stood. The empire of Timur lies beneath their wheels, a ghost, unseen but not unfelt. Every gust of wind carries its memory. Every echo hums with something that refuses to die. Somewhere in the old quarter, an archaeologist kneels in the dust. The light catches on his spectacles, turning them to two small suns. He brushes away centuries with a single slow stroke, revealing fragments of blue. Ceramic shards,
each one the color of a dream. The mosaic beneath his hands is not just art, it is resurrection. Patterns of turquoise and gold bloom from the earth, as if the city itself is remembering its name. Nearby, his assistant calls softly, a slab uncovered, script carved in the graceful curl of Persian lines. The historian bends closer, his shadow trembling against the stone. His fingers trace the letters, their edges still sharp despite the centuries. He whispers the words aloud, the ancient warning echoing in the vaulted air. Whoever disturbs this grave shall unleash war upon the world. He pauses, half smiling. Superstition, he murmurs, but the word falls flat, swallowed by silence. The wind stirs again, slow, deliberate, like breath from below the earth. Dust coils upward from the cracked tiles, circling his boots like smoke from an unseen fire. He straightens, waving to his team. Cameras flash, pens scratch. Science has triumphed over legend, or so he believes. But legends have long memories. And tonight, the stars above Samarkand burn with a strange coldness, as if they too are watching. Night falls over the city. The soldiers make camp outside the mausoleum, their fires flickering in the distance. The historian sits in his tent, writing by lamplight, his notes crisp, clinical, alive with discovery. He does not see the moths gathering near the flame, their wings catching the heat, until one by one they vanish into smoke. He does not hear the faint tremor beneath the ground, or the sound like a sigh rising from stone. Outside, the desert wind hums through the latticework, the same note the ancient builders once called the voice of God. In the east, beyond the black horizon, a new thunder begins to roll. Not the thunder of storms, but of machines. Engines, factories, guns. The age of steel is awakening. The earth shudders beneath the weight of locomotives, of cannons, of flags unfurled over lands that once answered only to the stars. And somewhere, far from Samarkand, soldiers move once more, their boots heavy, their faces set. The same rhythm, the same hunger, the same march of men convinced they are building forever. But forever is a fragile word. Every empire learns it too late. The historian dreams uneasy. In his sleep, he sees Timur's city alive again. The domes gleam, the bazaars roar, the courtyards bloom with flame. 1,000 banners rise against a red sky, and through the smoke walks a shadow, crowned, unbroken, silent. When the figure turns, the historian wakes gasping. His lamp has gone out. His papers scatter across the floor. In the stillness, he thinks he hears it again, the slow, distant beat of hooves. Morning brings sunlight, pale and indifferent. The dig site hums with voices, laughter, life. No one speaks of the night. But in the photographs taken that morning, behind the archaeologists, behind the tomb, A faint streak of shadow lingers, shaped like a rider on horseback. No one notices until years later. By then, the world has already changed. For beyond Samarkand, nations are stirring. Maps are redrawn, borders become wounds. The East and the West eye each other like sleeping beasts awakened too soon. And somewhere between them, the past shifts in its grave. A whisper turned to tremor, a memory turned to omen. The wind moves through the ruins once more, carrying both dust and prophecy. It passes over the cracked tiles and the broken dome, through streets where silence has grown thick with centuries. And as it fades into the horizon, it seems to carry a voice, low, echoing, almost human. Every empire dreams of eternity, and every eternity wakes in ashes. The camera lingers on the mausoleum, the blue dome glowing faintly beneath the morning sun. Its tiles cracked but unyielding, its warning still visible in the language of a dead age. A bird takes flight from the top of the dome, vanishing into the light. And far to the east, the sound of drums grows louder. The world is turning again. The old bones are stirring.
Fade to black. The fire is small, a trembling heart against the infinite dark. The night wind moves over the grasslands, whispering through the endless steppe, where no monument endures, only memory. The stars hang low, sharp as blades, ancient as regret. Each one burns above the land that birthed both shepherds and kings, both conquerors and dust. The storyteller sits beside the fire, his cloak heavy with frost. The lines on his face are maps of other lives, wars he did not fight, names he cannot forget. Around him, the circle of listeners is silent. Men, women, children, their eyes glint with the reflection of flame and legend. The old man draws in a slow breath, and when he speaks, the night itself seems to lean closer. Once, he begins, his voice rough as wind against stone, there rode a man who sought to rule the world, and in doing so, lost it. The fire crackles, sparks leap skyward, fleeing souls fleeing the earth. The man's words move like the rhythm of hooves, steady and mournful. He speaks of Timur, the Iron Lord, the hunter of cities, the builder of Samarkand, the man who chained the world to his dream and watched it shatter in his hands. His armies darkened the horizons, the storyteller murmurs. The ground trembled with their march. From Delhi to Damascus, from Shiraz to the edge of the Great Wall, the sky was heavy with smoke, and the rivers ran the color of rust. The listeners do not move. The fire hisses, a coal collapses inward, glowing red like an eye closing. The old man's voice softens. But for all his iron, Timur was haunted. He built his empire as if to outpace death, yet death followed him, step for step, whisper for whisper. The wind shifts.
It carries with it the scent of rain and something older, the ghost of the steppe, the breath of forgotten horses. In the distance, thunder rolls like drums across a battlefield that no longer exists. The storyteller lifts his gaze to the heavens. "Look up," he says. "The stars still burn where his campfires once stood. They watched him rise, they watched him fall, and they remember, though men forget." His hand trembles as he feeds another branch to the flames. The fire swells, painting the faces around him in light and shadow, faces that might have belonged to the soldiers who once followed Timur into oblivion. Faces of dreamers, of wanderers, of those who build without knowing what must be destroyed to build. He tells them of the marble cities, of towers that scraped the edge of heaven. He tells them of the mosques where the call to prayer rose through smoke, of the gardens that bloomed where bones once lay. He tells them of the loneliness of kings, of the silence that grows when power becomes a cage. In his words, Timur is no longer a tyrant or a god. He is a man, one who once sat alone in the cold of his own making, dreaming of youth, of wind, of a horse beneath him, and a sky without limits. A man who chased eternity and found only his reflection in the eyes of the dying. The fire dips lower. Children drift toward sleep, their heads heavy on their mother's shoulders. The old man's voice slows to a whisper. "They say," he breathes, "that when his tomb was opened, the earth itself protested, that the wind rose in anger and storms marched across the plains. Perhaps it was only chance, or perhaps some dreams should never be disturbed." A silence follows, deep, unbroken. The flames bow low, sighing against the chill. Above them, the sky gleams with the same constellations Timur once studied, the same stars Ulugh Beg measured with his compass and faith, the same stars that shone when Samarkand was young, and still shine now when all else has crumbled. The storyteller looks to the horizon. There is no border there, only distance, a vastness so pure it humbles the soul. He smiles faintly. "Empires die," he says, almost to himself. "But stories endure. They are the bones of time." He leans back, letting the quiet settle. The wind hums through the grass, low, constant, endless. It sounds like a memory being sung to sleep. Somewhere far away, a falcon cries, its voice sharp against the night. The sound drifts over the plain, over graves and forgotten roads, over ruins swallowed by the dust. For a moment, it is as if the land itself answers, a long exhale, a whisper of farewell. The fire dwindles to embers. The storyteller closes his eyes. The steppe stretches beyond sight, dark and silver beneath the stars. It is the same land that birthed kings and killers, poets and ghosts, and in its endlessness all are the same. dust carried by wind, names fading into the song of the earth. The final ember breaks apart, its light sinking into the soil that has seen everything and forgotten nothing. And there, in the stillness after the story, the night listens to itself. The tale of Timur, the Iron Lord, ends not in triumph or ruin, but in quiet, a quiet vast enough to hold both. The fire dies, the stars remain.